Welcome to the Professor Profession Skill Tree Guide for Harry Potter Wizards Unite. If you're looking for some help on your Professor skill tree, well, you came to the right place. If you want some help on your R or your Magizoologist skill tree, we'll link in the description to those videos. Let's get into the Professor. And to guide this content along, we will be using the Professor skill tree from GamePress. Link in the description to that if you want to mix and match your own skill tree. So starting out, just like any other profession, your main focus is going to be on power. So you're going to want to grab this guy and then go straight for the power. Grab this, more power. Oh shoot, double power, right? Now, if you are fortunate enough to have restricted section books before you have to make this critical decision here, it would be most optimal for you to take one here, take this hex, and go down this way to get to your next level of power. However, if you are not blessed and you've got all these scrolls you're sitting on, well, you may as well grab one crit and one crit power to just mosey on with your list rather than being stuck at this skill for the sake of niche optimization. The reason why you want to avoid precision and critical power for the most part, if you can, is because they scale very poorly to power. But honestly, at the end of the day, for 7 scroll each, it's not that big of a deal to get progressing on with your profession. Then from here, we get the protection charm, and oh, look at that, even more power. And then of course, we've got another little gate here, but it doesn't matter because we got to take these precision skills anyways to get to even more power. And then we got this skill, this skill, this skill. Well, hey there, power. A cool thing I want to note about these two power skills here is this one for 22 scrolls goes all the way up to +5, where the alternative here for 22 scrolls only goes up to 4. So you'll probably want to max out this one before you max out that one, provided you have enough spellbooks to do it. Now the reason why you're so focused on power early on in the game is because the best way to gain EXP is to grind level 1 fortresses. So the way to improve your efficiency with that is to power up your power so you can KO things that much faster. So turning your 3-hit KOs into 2-hit KOs into 1-hit KOs so you can just keep spamming that under the power of your Barufio Brain Elixir so you can maximize your EXP gains. But once you establish that strong baseline of power, well then you can start to max out any of the other skills however you like. I will give a special shout out to the precision skills because they improve your critical chance, and improving your critical chance is better than improving your critical power because you want to crit more often, and that will also help you progress through dungeons that much quicker. I call fortresses dungeons because it makes more sense to me as a RPG lord here, so I apologize for any confusion with that. And then from that point forward, powering up stamina, defense, critical power, it's all up to you. You will get enough scrolls for everything. The main thing that's holding back this profession is their need for restricted section books. Yeah, so you see here these lovely green books. You can only get them through events. At the time of recording this video, there's an event going on right now, so if you're not aware, flip open your app and try to get on that train so you can get your books, because out of all the professions in the game, this profession needs those restricted section books. I mean, the Magizoologist kind of needs them too, but the R absolutely does not care about them. We professors, we really care about them. I say we because I'm a professor, so I'm on the suffer train too, boys. So then the question becomes, where do I go with my restricted section books? Well, your first 28 are going to go into your hex. See this here? Bam, pump it up, right? Yeah, so the best thing about the Professor class is their access to the Deterioration Hex because it does supplement your damage, and then in party play you can supplement your allies' damage by just putting this hex onto foes. What it does is every time you attack, it hits them for 5, and every time they attack you, it hits them for another 5. So when you power it up, that's an additional 5. So in theory, at a base, it's +10 to your damage, and then it just goes up from there. So yeah, so power up this guy, and then power up this guy. One small consideration you could make for those last 4 books, instead of powering up this one right away, is to power up this improved proficiency charm. That way you can gain access to this proficiency power, which is quite tasty. However, if you're not that far along and you don't have a whole bunch of scrolls you're just holding on to for no good reason, well then you may as well just max out your hex and then worry about this later. So then after the first 28, we're on to our third event. Where do our restricted section books go there? Well, you have 2 options, technically 3. So let me get into it. Option 1, and the most basic option, is to go for this confidence skill. It's plus 6 defense when you have a charm placed on you, which really isn't all that impressive. It's only plus 6%, but what's really tasty about it is this, initial focus plus 1, which becomes plus 2. If you're not aware, your charms and hexes cost 3 focus to cast, and then this one here costs 7. Well, you start out in fortresses with only 2 focus, which means you can't access your charms and your hexes right away without using a potion. So that's kind of clunky. So going this route is a nice sort of, quality of life option to consider. However, if you think about this in a big brain kind of way, the only reason why you would want to access your charms and your hexes early on in a fortress is because you're trying to push really difficult content. If you're trying to push really difficult content, well, that's most optimally done in a group of people. And if you're in with a group of people, well, then ours can pass their focus to you, so you having that initial focus isn't that big of a deal. On top of that, if you are trying to push the hardest level of content, well, then you're already going to be using potions. And that 2 initial focus is supplemented by potions. In fact, you're going to be slogging so many potions, like that 2 initial focus is kind of going to fall to the backdrop. What's really going to be important for pushing difficult content is going to be your proficiency charm. Every time you improve the proficiency charm, that's another plus 4% to the proficiency power of all of your allies. You use it once, costs 7, you're slogging potions already, you got R's pumping you up already, does not matter. You use that and everybody gets a huge boost to their damage, especially since they'd be targeting foes that they're effective against. The main limiting factor in being able to push more difficult content is being able to clear all the enemies in the 5-minute time frame. You're worried like, oh, what if I die? Well, you got the Magizoologist with you, and they can bring you back to life. So sacrificing these power gains will actually hold back the team and your ability to push difficult content in the short run and in the long run, if you think about it. So that initial focus, supplemented by literally 1 potion, doesn't really matter if you really think about it. However, there is a third route for you to consider, and that is the improved protection charm. Why would you want to give up initial focus and power gains for the improved protection charm? Well, consider, if you're a professor and you're coordinating with other local players, right? Let's say you have a professor friend that you play with all the time. Well, would it make sense for both of you to take the improved proficiency charm if it buffs everybody immediately all at once? No. One of you is going to use it and the other one ain't. And the one who ain't is going to be casting that protection charm on people. Given the fact that the charm boosts everybody in one cast, it doesn't make sense for both of you to pump it up since it only takes one of you to apply the whole buff to everybody. So instead of wasting your points on that as the non-proficiency charmer, it would make a bit more sense for you to spend your points on the protection charm. That way, your protection charm is maxed out, their proficiency charm is maxed out, and you are able to blanket buff everybody to the best of your capabilities earlier. Now you might be sitting back and thinking, well, Ryan, if they do that, then the protection charm guy won't be able to get at this skill, and the proficiency charm guy won't be able to get at this skill or that skill, and I'm going to tell you, they can and they will. Events pay out 15 restricted section books per pop, right? And the first 28 are already accounted for. It's going to your hex. And then you have another 28 to power up these charms, right? Well, 15 times 4 is 60. 28 plus 28 is 56. There are 4 more books left over, which will allow you to gain access to these skills that you might think you might miss out on. So, at the end of the day, you ain't missing out on nothing. So those are the dynamic routes to consider. So now you're thinking, well, what comes after that? And I mean, honestly, that is something to think about. Even though you are spending the most amount of restricted section books compared to all the other professions, you do have the most amount of skills that require restricted section books. So you do have to carefully consider where you're going with these books. So after you power up your charms and your hexes, all that jazz, and you carefully consider if you want this initial focus or not, the next skill that I can recommend to you guys is this one here. It's just plus 5 to your power, strength in numbers. It's a little power bump, but if you buff yourself, you get the power bump. And that's nice because you can deal more damage then. Overall, as I said before, the main thing that holds you back and your team back from being able to push even harder content is your ability to KO things fast enough. So power gains are always going to be more important than defense gains, which means that the next skill that you'd want to take after that would be this other power gain. Teamwork makes the dream work. plus 12 power when you have 2 buffs on you. And if you are worried about solo content, you are able to apply 2 buffs to yourself. You got proficiency power and the protection charm. So there you go. Then after that, all the way down here, we got on sabbatical, bam, 3 buffs, another plus 12 power. And this arguably makes you the most powerful class in the game, as so long as you're in a group of people and you are able to maintain all these buffs. Then after that, you got the defense buffs to work with. An interesting thing is that if you do get all of your defense buffs and you have your protection charm maxed out, or a maxed out protection charm placed upon you, you can achieve over 100% damage reduction, which means you don't take any damage. Now, if you're sitting at home wondering, why don't I just get that right away? No damage sounds great. Well, as I said before, the main thing that holds you back from being able to push even harder content is the amount of damage you dish out, not the fact of you being able to survive or not. So kind of low priority in the grand scheme of things. Then after that, you got all of these other skills maxed out, and now you're thinking, do I want the pesky pixies or do I want the full moon hunter? Honestly, this is like months in the future. We may be playing a different game by then. And I think at that point, you're going to have a pretty good idea of what's giving you a bigger headache. Your ability to actually hit pixies or your ability to deal more damage to werewolves. And I think by that time, you'll be an intelligent enough of a professor to make your own decision on that matter. And there you have it. To recap, in the early game, what you're going to want to focus on is getting those power gains, because more power means your ability to clear the level 1 fortress that much faster, improving your EXP gains. Then, after you power up all your power skills, doesn't really matter what you power up from there. I guess precision is technically more useful, but at the end of the day, you're going to end up powering up everything pretty quickly. The main limiting factor you're going to be experiencing in your power progression is going to be the restricted section books. You can only get restricted section books from events, so make sure you keep your eyes peeled for those events so you can get those sweet power gains. The first books you get, you're going to want to put into your hex, because the hex supplements your damage. Then after that, you've got several routes to consider based on your team composition and what your goals are. I'd say overall the best idea though is to go to improving your proficiency charm. And then after that, there's just too many things to consider after that point, but I laid out the framework for you within the video, so I hope you got it. If you got any questions on this content, comment below, let me know what's up, and I'll be happy to help you out. And if you enjoyed this content, you want to see more like it, well then make sure to subscribe. SwagTips. The first restricted section books. Oh man, the first I just give up.